My name is Emi Braithwaite. Most people just call me Emi. I wanted to do this episode on being alone because oftentimes people are like, you shouldn't be alone.
What does it mean to be alone? For some, solitude is a time to recharge, reset, and reflect. For others, being alone feels like loneliness, a space they're desperate to escape. In this episode of JOYrific, we're exploring the differences between being alone and being lonely. We'll learn from an introvert who recharges energy in solitude. She's also an includer who thrives in connection. The skill of learning how to create space for yourself and create space for others. How can we honor the need for quiet without shutting people out? How can we expand our social circles while still respecting the boundaries of those who need space? Being alone isn't about isolation. It's about intention. It's about knowing when to step back and recharge your own battery and when to reach out and invite others in. So whether you crave time alone or love being surrounded by people, this episode is for you. Let's discuss what it means to be alone and what it means to be included on your terms.
Being alone because it's bad for your mental health. It will make you so you won't have friends and you'll be alone for a long time. But I think quite differently because I think about it a lot because I'm an introvert, and so I actually quite enjoy being alone. But oftentimes people mistake being alone for being lonely, and I think there's a big difference between being alone and being lonely, because being alone is I'm in my room drawing. That's being alone. But being lonely is you feel like you don't have anyone to help you. I feel like being lonely is a long-term thing, and being alone is just in the moment.
I think I've heard it before where there's some moms that feel lonely, but they're surrounded by children, right? It's a lonely place to be, motherhood sometimes. Even, you're not alone, you're lonely.
Yeah.
So how do you fix that? What do we do? Or how do we... Okay, first let's talk about how being alone charges your battery. And does it count for you to be alone with your cat?
Yeah. It could even count. I have a very close friend that I've known for 10 years, and I count hanging out with her with being alone, as in the sense of rejuvenating, because oftentimes how I rejuvenate is by not having social stress. And so with my friend and I, we can literally just sit there and just be alone together.
And you recently took the Clifton Strengths. Do you remember your top 5?
I know my top one was includer. I think I had developer, futuristic.
Yes.
Maximizer.
Yes. Strategic.
And strategic. Yes.
So 2 of those are my top 5. Strategic and futuristic. And developer is one of Dad's top 5. So let's talk about how those strengths with your word of being alone.
I think includer can be quite impactful with alone, because lots of times you can't only think about yourself being alone, but thinking about other people being lonely. Because if I got my choice and I didn't care about anyone, I would just not talk to anyone ever. But lots of times I notice when people like to talk to people, but they're feeling lonely and no one wants to talk to them. So lots of times that's when I jump in and I'm like, hey, how have you been? I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. Or if I don't even know them, it's a group project or something, I can be like, hey, what do you think about this topic? Because oftentimes we bounce off each other's ideas, which is a great thing, but we leave the people who aren't natural bouncing off ideas, and we leave them to just sit there, and it ends up making them feel unincluded, and so then they end up not wanting to do their work, or just wanting to sit on their phone the whole time, because they know they're oh, these people are going to ask me what I think, so why would I have to listen to what they think?
Oh, I think it's really profound that you're talking about being alone is a good thing for you. But also your top 5 strengths is includer. And that's a really interesting contrast there, because even as an introvert, you are recognizing others and helping them get out of their shell to contribute.
I think a thing that contributes to that is just because I'm an introvert doesn't mean I don't like talking to people at all, because like if I just didn't talk to a single person my entire life, that would be quite sad. And so I think from experience, because I don't I don't feel inclined to jump in and talk whenever I can. I feel inclined to listen. And so I think from experience of people of like knowing when people want to jump in, but since they don't ever jump in before, it's like unnatural to just like start talking. So I think I have the experience to be able to be like, oh, this person really wants to talk, and so like can we help make them so they can talk too?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so we've talked about what being alone means and how it helps you. Let's talk about being lonely, what that means, and how maybe some tips or tricks that you could help parents or teenagers that listening to this know what to do.
So I feel like lonely oftentimes, like when we're lonely, it our brains like are like, we're so alone, like nobody loves us, no one even sees us. And I feel like the best way to feel not alone is to go to things. I know it sounds kind of strange, like go to things. What does that even mean? But like how in Young Women's we do things every Tuesday. Lots of times, like before when I was like, oh, I'm kind of lonely, like I don't have that many friends. I wouldn't want to go because I'm like, I don't have any friends, so why would I go? But then having the mindset of just go, like
Like just
even
show up.
yeah, even if you don't do anything at all or you don't have fun, showing up and getting that experience is better than just not doing anything. And because of that, like I become closer to like my neighborhood, and I notice people notice you more when they see you more. So like if they only see you at church to like for an hour like once a week, then you're not that noticeable because you're just that random person in church. But then you go to like Young Women's or like even some like bishop activities like firesides, and they're like, oh, this person, I have a lot of things in common, like I see them all the time, like why I should go talk to them. And so I feel like that can help you, because I noticed when you think about people, instead of thinking, oh, they don't notice me, instead say, oh, I'm noticing them, and so I should talk to them. Because lots of time when you feel lonely, you're like, I'm the only one that's lonely, and like everyone is like it goes into like you have a lot of FOMO, and you're like, oh no, like everyone's having fun without me, but like nobody knows me, so I can't talk to them. But instead, you gotta think like, oh, people are having fun, I want to have fun, so I should go talk to the people having fun. Even just like during lunch, people form groups, and like I know like some random people in groups, and so I'll just go and stand there and listen. And oftentimes, when you stand next to them, like the group like opens in a way that you can stand there, and then you can listen, and like there might come up something like, oh yeah, Spider-Man's so awesome. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I love Spider-Man. And they're like, oh, you do? And so then it forms a connection.
That is such includer of you. Like, I love that you have witnessed that opening of the circle. I don't think that's a common thing for people. I think that that's unique to the talents that you have. I want you to tell a little bit about after church today, because you did speak in church. What inspired you, or you after you spoke, you wanted to do something with the other people that spoke. So tell us about that.
After church, these people were really nice. They were sitting next to me, and they were like, oh, what's your name? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm Emi. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. And they're like, how many siblings do you have? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have 6 siblings. They're like, oh my goodness, wait, what's your last name? And I'm like, I'm a Braithwaite. And they're like, we're your ministering sisters.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, really? That's so cool. They're like, yeah. And like, we're kind of new. We like moved in like 4 months ago. I'm like, that's so cool. And then I'm like, oh, wait, why did we make Taco Tuesday? And I remembered back to that day, and I'm like, we made Taco Tuesday to connect with people, and these new people in the ward, they need connections. And I'm like, well, we need to start it, because nothing starts without some person intentionally starting it. Like, it doesn't just happen. So I was like, oh, we need to invite them to Taco Tuesday. Like, the moment they're like, we're your ministering teacher, I'm like, Taco Tuesday. I need to tell them. And so, like, I said my talk, and then I came back, and she's like, oh, you did so amazing. And then, like, she was really nervous. I could tell. So she was like, you're so amazing. And then, like, she got up, and she's like, and so I was like, I need to tell them to come to Talk Tuesday. Like, it's going to be a party. And so the whole time I was thinking, I'm like, how can I do this? Because of my introvertedness, I really don't, like, know how to start conversations that much. And, like, because I don't always enjoy starting conversations, but I know I need to invite them. And so that means I have to have a conversation. I can't just be like, come to Taco Tuesday and walk away.
Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday. And so I was like, oh, I know who's really good at starting conversations, my mom. So as soon as they were done talking, I tried to do it by myself, but then, like, the bishop came over, and I'm like, I don't want to interrupt them, and, like, it turns into a little thing. And then normally from experience, I'm like, I don't want to interrupt them, and then they end up leaving. And so I'm like, I can't have that. I need them to come to Taco Tuesday. And so I'm like, oh, Mom is really good at inviting people. So I ran down the stairs, and I'm like, Mom, we have to invite them to Taco Tuesday right now. Like, right now. And so he's like, okay. So then we go. And you start talking to them, because I feel like starting conversations is the hardest, but you started talking to them, and then you were like, hey, Emi, you would like to invite them? I'm like, oh, yeah. Yes, I would. And so then I was like, hey, you want to come to Talk Tuesday? And they're like, of course, that would be amazing. And I'm like, I know.
That's awesome. I want to point out a couple of things in that story that just happened. Is first, you sought help. Somebody that had, and communication is one of my top 5. So yes, I'm pretty sure Max really wants to be included in this conversation. Okay. I wanted to point out a couple of things that you did there. So one, you sought for help, and communication is in my top 5. So I often am, like, really easy for me to find words to say. And with futuristic and strategic, which was shining through, like, you recognized, if I don't do this now, they're going to leave. I'm going to lose my chance. And it was very strategic of, they're new. I'm an includer. I want to connect them. And I'm very impressed by that. Good job. The other thing that I want to point out to those listening is I could have just gone and invited them, but I know that it's actually a skill that you can learn. And I think that there's this trust that you and I have, that you trust that I'm going to help you and I'm not going to embarrass you most of the time. And I trust that when you've come and asked me for help and you're like, this needs to happen right now, that it is true. But you're not telling me to do it. You're actually requesting, like, the assistance to be able to do it yourself. And one day I know that you'll be able to lean on the faith of my communication skills and do it yourself. And that's how you did with that circle opening up and seeing somebody. So I'm really impressed with that. I mean, that's really cool. That's really cool. Okay, so the last one that I want to talk about. Actually, do you have any questions?
About what?
I don't know. About being alone.
I don't know. Have you ever felt alone?
Have I ever felt alone? Whew. Yes, I have. There were times, it was the transition from being in high school and being at home to transitioning into being in college and new roommates, new campus, new city, new classes, new everything, that I did feel alone. And I remember one time driving in my 1999 Saturn, and I would drive up the hill, and I would sit, and in my loneliness, I would pray. And oftentimes, as I prayed, something would happen closely like unto that. Which, when I pray, I'm kind of like unique in my prayers. I don't know. Everybody's unique in their prayers, obviously. But I like to kind of make deals of, like, I'll do this and then you can do that, right? So there was a time, I would say probably the loneliest that I ever felt. Oh, it's going to make me cry. It was, oh my word. It is exactly today. What's today?
Exactly today.
It's very, very, very close. So in 2003, on February 14th, is the day that my grandma died. And Grandma J. She lived with us for a very long time. She was a very motherly figure. My mom worked, and so she was the one that was home after school. And I went to Las Vegas for a week for the funeral, and I came back from the funeral, and I felt very alone, very alone. And so, and I had learned that when I felt alone that I should pray. And so, I wasn't feeling very, like, it's not going to happen, right? I was feeling very downhearted, I guess I could say. So I prayed, and I was like, okay, like, God, I feel alone. And before I finished my prayer, my phone started ringing, which it was the olden days, and we had cell phones, like the old brick cell phones. And it was the Wells. It was Carrie's parents. They called me and invited me over for Sunday dinner. And it was very unusual for them to call me. And because I'm always like an instigator, and I'm happy to like instigate and go and reach out. But, and I don't even know what made them call me at that moment. But they called me at that moment, and I went to dinner with them, and it was lovely. And they are just practically perfect in every way. And I adore that family a lot. And then I came back from that dinner, and Garth was in my apartment and hanging out with my roommates. And from that day, Garth and I spent every day together for like probably 15 years before we spent a day apart. And I was very alone. I was very lonely. And I just prayed, and I said, like, you gotta, like, I need help. I can't do this. And he came over, and I think I also, like, leaned into it of, like, obviously I prayed for this, so this is the answer. And Garth is, like, the most magical thing that has ever happened in my life. And my mom kind of jokes that, like, Grandma J had to die so that from the other side she could go and, like, rearrange our schedules so that Garth and I could come together. And Garth is amazing. So that, I would say that's probably the most impactful time that I felt alone. And it was right before, which I had met Garth, and I met him in January. But this was really the first time that we, like, hung out. And, like, he came over to, like, hang out with me. And he asked for a haircut. I was like, sure, I'll give you a haircut. Like, and then he just kept coming back asking for haircuts. And, like, I'd never cut anyone's hair in my life. Like, I'd seen my mom cut hair. But, like, and so anyways, that's when Garth and I got together. So then we became really best friends. Then we started dating. Then we got engaged. And then we got married. And then we had babies. And here you are, Emmy. Is there a time that you've ever been alone?
Yeah. So I was thinking of this time, and it was like this time where I was feeling slightly empathetic, and it was a time where Grace...
Wait, explain what that means.
Empathetic?
You were feeling a time when you were feeling empathetic.
Yeah. So like I was noticing people around me, and I was like, oh my goodness, like they're feeling so alone, making me feel alone.
Oh, like you were feeling their feels.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was like Gracie had lots of new friends. She met a whole bunch of new people. And this girl that lives next door, I love her. She was feeling ditched. Like Gracie's moving on, but she hasn't found people yet. And I specifically remember, like, weeks before, where every time Gracie and this girl would hang out, they would never invite me. And Gracie was like, I always thought it was, like, implied, like, just come over. And I'm like, well, I don't usually catch those things that, like, it's just implied to just, like, come over. Mm. And so I remember distinctly, this is going back to Includer, I remember distinctly thinking in my brain from that day, I'm like, every time I'm going to hang out with someone, I'm going to invite at least one other person. Like, in my brain, it went ding. And, like, I do it every time. Like, and, like, yeah. But since they're moving on, and, like, they had been hanging out every day for, like, weeks and weeks and weeks. And she was feeling really alone. And I'm like, this is what I felt like when you guys were hanging out. Like, Gracie had moved on, and, like, I didn't have many friends at that time. And I remember, like, they were feeling alone, and I invited Zoe to something, and she was like, oh my goodness, I've never, like, truly met you before. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you guys don't invite me that much. And so I feel like me feeling her alone made me feel like I'm less alone, because then, like, we could, like, I connected to her in a way that's like, we're alone together. And so being alone together helped me feel not lonely, but just alone together. And so just from that day, I'm like, I always want to invite people to come with me, because not only do I not like going alone, but also, like, other people don't like being alone. So
that's really impactful. I really like how it's like something in your brain that turned on of I have felt this, and they have felt this, and we can feel this together. And I noticed how you said it was so she just assumed, right? Like, she just assumed that you would. But that's not often what happens. And one of her top 5 is Relator. And Relator have these deep relationships that they build. And Includer has this wide thing that this ability to open that circle wider. And I love that. I mean, that's really profound. That's a really good.
And there's a distinct thing I think about all the time, where it's from a Barbie movie.
Yes.
I think about it, and it's the Barbie one where, like, with the fairies, and, like, it's the whole thing. And there's one point where the evil queen, she's like, they're like, oh, she's so evil, like, why can't she just let us do what we want? And it turned out that the whole reason she was, like, mad was because her friends went to something and didn't invite her. And because they were just assuming, they're like, oh, I know for a fact you're gonna be busy that day, so, like, I didn't want to invite you because, like, I knew you're gonna be busy and you couldn't come anyway. And so that to my little 6-year-old brain was like, what? They didn't invite her? And so now I think about it all the time, and, like, people are like, oh, they're gonna be busy, so we should just not invite them. And I'm like, no, that's mean. Like, we have to invite them no matter what. So there's oftentimes,
Well, and I think it allows them the opportunity to say yes or to say no.
Yeah.
It's not your choice for that. It's their choice to, and maybe they'll rearrange their schedule, or maybe they'll know next time that they'll come. And that's part of the skills of Taco Tuesday, and that's why we continue to do Taco Tuesday, is that it's a good opportunity to practice those invitations. Whether they come or not is not going, that's not the end result. The end result is that practice of inviting.
yeah. So I have this one friend that I love so much at school, and I know for a fact that she does ballet, and it's from 4 to like 8:30, and so, like, she's not gonna be able to come to Taco Tuesday, but I have invited her every single time, and I'm like, hey, Taco Tuesday this week if you want to come. And she's like, oh darn, I have ballet again. But, like, I always invite her, even though I know for a fact she probably won't even be able to come until, like, October.
Yeah.
But I always invite her anyway.
Or if something gets canceled, or, like, something happens, or, like, what if she breaks her foot, right? Like, there's other things out there that are available. That's great. I mean, that's great. Do you listen to podcasts?
Sometimes. Oh, there's this one that I really like, that it's like social confidence for life.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that it's like, I don't know, it's a lot of random things, like the importance of eye contact, because lots of people are like, oh, eye contact isn't that important. It's literally your eyes, like an inch tall thing that like an inch doesn't matter compared to the whole 5'6" of you. And then you don't notice that, like, if I'm going like this and talking to you, you feel like a lot more connected to me than if I was like going like this, and I'm like, oh yeah, and, like, I really like to make eye contact with people, because, like, you don't feel connected. You feel like you're just, like, listening to me like how you would watch a movie. You're not connecting to that movie. You're just listening or watching the movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. I like eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to reach out, include others.
You just gotta do this. Until they think you're crazy.
What's something else you've learned from JOYrific?
From JOYrific, it's okay to have feelings. If you didn't have feelings, you'd be a brick.
It is okay to have feelings.
Oh, there's this cool thing I've been doing recently that I thought of, because I've been wanting to write letters to my friends, but like that's kind of random, like, and I don't know all their addresses, and I don't want to be like, what's your address? So I'm like, I want to write letters, but like, who can I write letters to? And so I was thinking of writing down a prayer like it's a letter, and I've been doing it like a few times recently. So you start out with like, dear Heavenly Father, comma, and then I always talk about my day for a second. I'm like, this was a great day because I was able to hang out with my best friend, and like I had some yummy tacos, and maybe like I went swimming. And then I'm like, thanks for helping me talk to that person, because I knew without your help I probably would have not talked to that person. So thank you for that, and thank you for this wonderful day. And then I'm like, I was wondering if you could help me with this thing, because like maybe like I have homework and like I don't want to get it done like at all. And so I'm like, I was wondering if you could help me like feel more motivated. And then in the end it's always like, your beloved daughter, or sincerely, or thank you so much, Emi Braithwaite.
That is awesome. That's a really good idea. I like that. When I was a kid, did you know that I wrote in my journal every day since the time I was 12?
12?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And I always wrote to my future children.
oh yeah, I did that once in my journal, and I drew a picture, and it was like of a hand, and then I look at it. At the time I was like, that's the best hand I ever did see. And then I look at it, it's like, I'm like, oh.
Isn't it amazing how, which actually this is leaning into your futuristic. I mean, it was leaning into my futuristic. And here I am. I actually had kind of forgotten that. Here I am now, and I have a whole bunch of kids. And I should go back and read that journal. Like, what on earth did I have to tell them? Like, what was it going to tell my future kids? I didn't really know anything. Anyways, I didn't feel like I knew much. I still don't feel like I know much. That's why I do this podcast, because I like learning more, and I like hearing from other people's perspective on how it is that they do things, so that I can maybe learn something and take it and apply it into my own life. And any last words?
Love you all.
I would like you to wrap up this episode. You can look straight at that camera.
Thank you for listening.
Whoa,
to
not
our
like that. Don't look like that.
Thank you everyone for listening to our podcast, and please remember to invite your friends so that we can all relate together.